that you want to do reruns and invite all your friends over to watch, then you'll know that you can find it. So this is our first hangout of MFA 660, and it's the last day of August, and somehow summer went somewhere. I don't know if it's out in Illinois or if it's in Brattleboro, but it's not here. It's not here in Dublin anyway. So the first thing I wanted to ask is, do any of you have friends or family that's affected by the flood? Because that is actually more important than this class at the moment. Does anybody have anybody? No. Good. Good. We already lost Nancy. So that my scaring her off by my desk has worked. It's done. All right. So look, I want to say first how encouraged I was by your interactions with each other. I know this was the easy part, you know, that like you're just introducing each other to the classmates and to me, and you're not critiquing anything, but there really was a genuine interest in each other. And that was really wonderful for me to see. I've had classes, they've all been terrific. I've liked everyone I've taught, but some classes, the level of engagement with each other has varied. And this was really an excellent start, because the success of what we do really depends so much on how each of us engages with each other and our own work and the work of classmates. And it was clear from what I read over the last few days how much each of you understand the commitment that you're making, and just to be in the program, and also the risks that you take, because you're going to be opening yourself up in your work. This is a personal essay class. You know, it's one thing to write about a profile of somebody else. It's another thing to kind of go inside here and to share those stories. So the more we trust each other with these stories, the freer we're going to be. And I really liked what I saw. And my goal for tonight is to everyone leaves. Hi, Nancy, again. Can you hear us okay? Nancy, you're back with us?
I'm trying you again. I'm back. I can hear you.
Oh, good. I just said something, the most important thing I've ever said to any class, and I missed it, but no, I'm just joking. You didn't miss anything, except I was praising everybody for your interactions. And like, for example, Nancy, everybody who did not know you, who learned how the courage that you showed to read in your own work in Ireland when seemed like it was quite traumatic for you, but you got through it. That's the kind of thing that already from the get-go means that we kind of trust each other with our stories. You know, you got down to some personal details in that little introduction to us there. And I want everyone to leave here tonight with a really clear idea of what we're going to do, what's expected, and you know, and anybody can ask any question at any time. So that's where I'm going to start. If any of you have questions, I'm just going to assume that you've read the syllabus, at least you've skimmed it. Does anyone have any questions on what you think I am intending for us to get to this semester?
Mel, excuse me just 1 second before you get going. I got a text from Beth that she's having trouble, and she just wanted me to let you know, but she's trying to get in. She's having a little bit of trouble.
Okay, that's why I asked for those cell phone thing, was just so that for this very reason, that you each can text and let me know. Nancy, I don't think I have your cell phone, so if you don't mind sending it to me that way, if like I was having trouble getting on, and I can just text everybody saying, hey, for some reason I'm having trouble, so you don't. So that was that. Okay, no questions except for that?
No.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Are all the readings going to be so sad?
How many of you read so far?
Well, just the two that we had for this week.
So you have Andre's about Country Road Song, and Becky Tuttle's about the corn. What a good question. You know what's interesting about that? I love. That's a great point. I will try to find some funny essays as well. But in truth, Nancy, when people publish personal essays, editors, and now I'm speaking from my point of view, we tend to go to ones that are going to move people. We tend to go to ones that, like there's one in the July issue of Yankee called Ain't Doing Right, and it's about a dog. One of you sent me a story about the shepherd.
Me.
That's right. So, you know, this was a story. You'd think, how many essays have there been written? Maybe 22,000 about dogs that possibly don't live forever. Most dogs don't. And Ain't Doing Right took that theme and did it in a really fresh way, and we've already had a really good response to that. So as an editor, when these stories come in, if they move us, we tend to probably lean that way, maybe more than the humor, only because, frankly, the really fine humorous essay is probably a rare thing. But so yes, some of these readings are going to move you. They're going to be somewhat emotional, probably. But at the same time, I can do a better job of finding things that will make us smile. And you, each of you, can also help. We're going to get to that, how I really welcome when you come across something that has inspired you, you send that to us and we incorporate that. But yeah, see, to me, it's funny. We'll talk about it, of course, next Wednesday, but Andre's, for me, is not so much sad as a writer coming to terms with his reality and trying to remember the best of what he was. But on the most part, there's going to be, and even the ones that in the low paid book, you're going to find essays that tend to hit the heart maybe more than the funny bone. But you can change that. Okay, you already have shown you have real wit in your soul. So let us have it, okay? So the readings. Look, I began 3 years ago teaching this particular course. I was teaching at UMass before I went online, and this Philip Lopate book has been used as the foundation text in the Bay Path curriculum, and his book is considered one of the best surveys of the personal essay from the centuries past to the late 20th century. You won't find 21st century essays in this book because I believe it was published before the year 2000, I believe. But so some of these readings will not be the kind that you wake up in the morning, get that first cup of coffee, that first cup of tea, and you kick back and you sit back and say, man, this is just going to be a fun read. Most of the essays in this book are not, I'll make quotes here, are not fun reads in his book. But we read them in part because they influence the essayists of the time that they were written and all the essayists that came after that. And so it should be part of your foundation the same way. I always will say that if you are a new budding artist and you've been to art school, you probably, even if you'll never once do any painting in the style of Rembrandt or El Greco or Degas, you still will study what these artists did because it becomes part of who you are. It's the same thing. And also, as you well know, your MFA gives you the credentials to teach creative writing anywhere, and it's going to probably be expected you at least can talk about Montaigne. Whether you enjoy Montaigne or not, you will at least be able to introduce his work to the people who are in there with you. Any questions about that part? All right. On top of that, though, I include personal essays from writers I've admired. In many cases, writers I've known and I've worked with, and I've been fortunate enough to have published. For example, the late Andre Dubus, who wrote Country Road Song. I took his workshop for many weeks. He had it in his home in Haverhill before he died. Some really wonderful writers went through his workshop. We published probably about maybe 8 to 10 of his essays during my time here, plus his fiction. And so I like reading him. I have his book by my bedside. I always read his fiction and his essays. And I like talking about Andre to other people as well because of what he endured and how he took this very painful part of his life and he turned it into art. At the same time, I really try to incorporate as much as possible writers who nobody has ever heard of, writers who were either in an MFA program where they wrote these essays in an MFA program, or they just were recent graduates in an MFA program, or in the case of Becky Teller-Schultz, had never been published before ever, but had worked with a writer, in this case, the writer Joyce Maynard. She took a workshop with Joyce Maynard. She sent it to us. We liked it. We're going to publish that next. You're actually going to read it. many months before it's published in Yankee. But the reason I'm doing this, why I try to incorporate the unknown writers, is I'm going to ask you now. Why do you think I would, if you were teaching this course, why would you want to include writers who are not yet the finished artists? They're not famous. They're not Joan Didion. Why would I also include that? Why would you possibly include it?
I think it gives people hope.
Yes, that's one very good reason. There's others. What's another one?
Maybe to see newer work.
Newer work. It's two. If we get the magic three, you all get to have the buffet that I have here. There's another one. You know what the other one is? I'm going to tell you. The third one is because I want you to see, because you're all in different stages of your writing careers. You know, like Lori's already published 5 books, for example. Kim teaches in this at a college and so on. I want you to see that even if it's an unknown writer, even if it's a writer who still has maybe quite a few years to grow with her work, if this writer is still using the basic elements of this personal essay craft, if you can tell that she is being truly honest, if you can tell that she's revealing some kind of universal truth, or she's connecting with us, even though she's writing about a particular event in her life, if she's doing it through vivid writing, if she's doing it through really tight writing, if she's doing this in a way that the ending makes you feel like you're really glad you've been on this voyage with her, if all those things are happening, it doesn't matter if she is famous or she runs a convenience store in your town. If she can write with these basic elements of craft, I want to publish them. So that's why I include them. And of course, the hope part is really big. And of course, the fact that I'm introducing you to new work. You're going to read one very soon by Kate Walsh. She was just a senior in my UMass class who had this one story that she was living through, and she went through 3 drafts, and each one got tighter and tighter and tighter. And I love showing that to adult writers as well. Are there any questions? Comments? Okay. And this is why I also add, I really do welcome the links to any writer that you're reading that really moves you or it makes you laugh. And then we can just share each other that way. That's what makes a great writing group. Okay, so I know time is important to you. I know you all have other lives. I know, can you see this thing that just came on my computer? Does that show up on your screen? Okay, it's like an email thing. I want to be sure it doesn't show up for you. You have other lives, but I want to urge you not to take shortcuts with the readings if at all possible, because to me, the foundation of this course is what I call reading like a writer. And I want to know what each of you might think when you hear that phrase, reading like a writer, or if you were teaching a writing course and you told the students, I want you to read like a writer, what would that mean to you? Kim, I'm going to start with you because you teach.
Yeah, when you read something, to pay attention to the technique and the craft and the effects of every word, every sentence, really.
Yes, that's exactly right. And Lori, how about you? When you hear that phrase, I want you to read like a writer, what are you hearing?
I think the same thing that Kim said, but I think that I would just add that I know when I'm really invested in a piece, or when a piece has really got me, because I'm unable to read like a writer. I have to read it through the first time in order to just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then I have to go back and read it like a writer. And so that's one of the ways that I can tell whether I'm connecting with a piece, is whether I'm able to read like a writer the first time through.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Maria, how about you?
Yeah, when I hear that, I think, because originally when I started the class, I wasn't reading like a writer. I was just reading. And so when I look for things that are devices, things that I can pick up to use myself, I think, oh, this is how they did this. This is how they introduced information with a flashback, where I normally would not look for anything like that. I would just be reading for content.
Great. And one thing I always point out as well, many writers we have, especially those of us who are taking like a personal essay kind of course, we may not have a lot of experience with writing dialogue. We may not have written plays before. And I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I still marvel when I see a really fine piece of dialogue that's injected into essays or a nonfiction piece and so on. How about you, Nancy? When you hear that phrase, reading like a writer, what does that say to you?
I think it's like, it's to read for inspiration, you know, to sort of find the sparkly things that, just to look for the sort of sparkly things that the author put in there that I might not have put in there, or I might not have noticed if I was just focused on the plot or the characters or some other more simplistic devices.
I love that phrase, sparkly things. So I'm going to throw that out back to you. What do you mean by sparkly things? It's a nice phrase.
Oh, it's just the way, you know, like even with a character, making an unlikable character like compelling, or to describe something in a way that you might have never thought of it described, or just using interesting imagery, or to yeah, just the maybe the things that the details that the small details that seem like the author put there. Well, we know that the author puts them there deliberately, but they're that maybe you don't realize that they're there. Like I said, if you're just reading it like a reader, you might not realize how carefully constructed every sentence is.
Okay, that's great. And I think we have Beth has just joined us. Hey, Beth.
Hi.
Yeah, you can see it. So I know you've probably been frantic for the last 18 minutes. So I'm going to just introduce, you may actually know some of the people here, but I don't know how you're seeing the screen, but I'm looking right to the right of you is Kim, and right to the right of Kim is Lori. Lori, am I pronouncing your name right? Lori?
Lori, yes, that's right.
And right to the right of Lori is Maria. And then we have Nancy.
Maria?
Maria.
Hi, Nancy.
And Nancy. And so, Beth, what was going on? It wasn't letting you in.
Well, I had some issues with a plugin. I kept getting a message that I needed a plugin. And when I got on the tech line, I realized that with a recent installation of my Surface software, I got knocked out of Google Chrome, and it was the browser that was the problem. I was not using the right browser to get in.
But now you're in, so now this should work going on. So one thing that we covered, and tomorrow this will be posted online. You can catch the riveting first 19 minutes. Okay, and so we did ask if there were any questions about the syllabus and so on, and that's one thing I started with. So did you have any questions after what you read to see the scope of the course?
No, I had a small question about, are there any constraints in your discussion post?
What do you mean by constraints?
Well, should it be under a certain number of words, your discussion post, or?
I've never had constraints, but I might as well ask the group, because we are a workshop. Do some of you feel like if one person has commented in 300 words, do you feel compelled then to have a long post? Or, I mean, what do people feel about that?
It doesn't matter too much to me either way, I guess. I don't think I would feel compelled to follow suit.
Any more? Because I would say you write, because there's 5 of you, so each of you is responding to 4 others, and write what you feel would be helpful. Write what possibly has spurred you to think about something, but don't feel like you have to do an essay about somebody's work. But you do. What I do love, and Beth, the way I started was telling everybody how much I love the engagement already that you were showing, the whole group, that you were actively involved with each other, and that's what makes it really good. So no, there's no constraint, but your constraint is your time, you know. So you know that you have you have your discussion about the readings, you have the discussion about the other people's comments, and you have your writing prompts and discuss. So, what you want to do is just be engaged, and as if we were kind of sitting around a room, and we were saying, "What do you think, Beth? Nancy, what did you think about that?" And so on and so forth.
I thought that it was okay that nobody commented that I was constipated or that I threw up. I felt that I didn't need people to respond to that. So I'm okay with, just putting out there what you need to put out there. And if you need more from the group, then you can ask for, if you feel like there's radio silence on something that you want more discussion on, I think that we can, say, hey, where's everybody? Or what do people think about this or something?
That's a great comment, and something I've never actually come up before, Nancy, is if you do comment on something and you want to have specific reaction to that, absolutely. Nancy Yankee, our magazine, has 80, I think I have 150, 200,000 Facebook followers there. So you didn't mind that I put that out there to Facebook, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think people who are going to Ireland should really know that you might need to bring some prunes with you.
All right, that's great to bring up. And this lives live. This will stay alive for like years and years and years. People will come back and watch this. All right. So the discussion questions on the readings, everybody, they are not designed at all to test if you have done the readings. That's just a given. I know you're going to make time, you're going to read it. They're really designed, these questions, just to inspire some sort of dialogue about what we've read and what we might take away from our own writings. That's always the question in there, okay? And you can always, at any time, I should have said this from the outset, if you have any question, anything that feels confusing to you, you have my, on that syllabus, you have my Baypath email, you have my Yankee email, you have my cell phone, you have my Yankee phone, so you can find me and each other. All right, the writing prompts, right? They're designed just like any writer's workshop you've ever been in, right? That to keep you focused. This is a writing workshop. It's not just a reading one like for scholars and so on. And we're going to be commenting on these writing discussions, but the comments are always going to be about to help each other to write sharper, compressed. If there's a flow, is there a structure? Even in the short assignments, these are things that we comment on especially to find things that work with each other, or sometimes each of us may have like some kind of a blind spot that we're not aware of, that we can pick that out. Like I believe one of you said that I think it was you, Maria, who said that you feel it sometimes you get a bit wordy. I think that was your comment, right? So even in these short 250 word things, if that becomes something we see, we say, hey, is there a way that you can say this 30 words? What would you say if I only gave you 10? That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's what that's designed for. I want you to also know that during our time together like this, I may say, I will bring your work to have it accessible. So I'll say, Nancy, I'd love you to read the second paragraph. Or Maria, I'd love you to read your lead on this. Or, Lori, I'd love you to read this essay, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to take it that this is not going to be daunting for anybody. This is not like going in front of your Ireland thing. You're going to be okay with that, Nancy? We're going to need everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just bring your work to the group. Now, any questions at all?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Lori.
So can you talk a little bit about the state of the writing prompt pieces that we turn in? And so what I'm trying to get at is one of the things that is very difficult for me personally is sharing work before I think it's finished. And I sort of have begun to feel like that's going to be a big part of what this MFA process will help me with, is I'm going to have to learn to share work before I feel like it's really finished. And so I'm just curious what you would say about the state of the pieces that we're turning in. Like, are they? I know that they're going to be professional and somewhat a whole, but they're going to be drafts. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lori. I consider, I have like 2 levels here. Do you see my hand? 2 levels, okay. And the one is what I call the main personal essay piece, where if you see on the syllabus, I give like a goal or an idea of this should be at least like a 2,000 word piece. Maybe it goes over that. I believe the Corn Season by Becky Tuttle, I believe that was about 2,300 words, something like that. And that's a piece that we have 3 drafts for. You have draft 1 where you're kind of letting us see, okay, here's the framework, and here's where this is not the final draft. This is not being sent to Plowshares or Literary Magazine. Then I believe a month later, I have the dates here. Our first draft is October 15th. The second draft is November 5th. That's another, so we have like all the way to October 15th. Second draft is November 5th. That's when you now have these things kind of smoothed out because we've had comments, you've had time to think about. It's going to be close to what you wanted to say. And the third draft is December 6th. So it's, you know, that's when I'm expecting this to be as polished and as professional as you feel like you can make it. And my hope is that this will be in a place where we can then suggest, and hopefully I can help you with editors I know and so on, and you can be sent out. That's one level. The second one is the writing prompt, where this is designed to keep people kind of pumped up and thinking about strong first sentences and a strong ending and so on. But it's not designed to be something that you will send out. It's also designed in a way, as we talk about these, say, you know what, this possibly could be expanded into something else, because it's coming. These writing prompts tend to, I know many of you have been in writing workshops before, the writing things tend to stir something. They tend to be a little catalyst.
Yeah.
The prompt may say, is there anything that you failed at or anything you've lost? I think it was lost, the first one, because of 100 of you. And that may just stir something you haven't even thought about for the last 20 years. I mean, last night, I phoned one of my high school friends who I've never been back to my hometown in Pennsylvania. Not since I left for college, a long time ago. And this person who one of my best friends when I was 17 and 18, had written me that he was taking a bicycle trip up to Maine, and would I possibly be able to see him because I live in New Hampshire and so on. Prompted me to call him after last time I saw him was well over 50 years ago. And we talked for like 45 minutes. And then I went to bed eventually last night, and I had a dream about something I'd never thought I would have dreamt of in a million years. It took me back to when I was a boy living in this little town, Pennsylvania. And so maybe if the prompt had been, tell us about a dream you had, I would never normally have thought maybe to write about that, but that prompt would maybe stir something up, and maybe it would end up leading to something totally different about why a writer would not have gone back to his hometown after 50 years, that kind of thing. So the prompt is simply a catalyst. And this is something that, who was, I think it was Beth. Beth is struggling with being a perfectionist, correct? During our little conversations back and forth. So if, Laura, you're a published writer with 5 books to your name, and I can understand that you don't want to ever let us see anything that feels rough around the edges, like a carpenter doesn't want to show us anything that didn't quite, but that's not what that's designed for. It's simply to get us thinking, talking, and so on. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
And I think you're going to find that the goal here, as we are critiquing each other, is simply to be helpful. And it's not helpful to say, I love everything that you've written, and there's nothing to say. Helpful is to be empathetic and generous, but if it applies, say, I wonder if you could have possibly, have you thought about doing this, that kind of thing. And it's always, I can just tell you from my own experience here at this magazine all these years. If I write something and I give it to 5 different people, those 5 different people may all have a different thing to say, and I get back and say, and I go like this, I'm not sure. So I usually give it to one person. And that person who I've really trusted for a long time, and then I kind of write according to what I believe is correct from this one person. We don't have the luxury of doing that. So just know that when you have 5 people, and I make 6, but 4 other people, I'm sorry, I make 5, comment on your work, you don't need to integrate everybody's suggestions. You need to integrate what feels right to you. It is your work. It's Nancy's work. It's Beth's work. It's Kim's work. It's Lori's work. You know, it's Maria's work. It's your work. And you listen, say, that makes sense, or it doesn't make sense to you. And then you incorporate what works for you. I know it's easier said than done, everybody, but I have nothing frustrates me more as a teacher of a class like than I can tell when a writer is trying to fit in 5 different suggestions into one piece, and it's very hard to do that. Any other questions on that part? So do note those dates, and you know, October 15th, November 5th, December 6th, and all right. So now about when stuff is turned in. Okay. Every other year I've done this course, I've had the module close at midnight on Saturdays, and that was done selfishly because I devote Sundays to Bay Path. During the week, it's all I'm reading all this other stuff, and I'm putting together this magazine. Saturday, I try to give myself, I call it downtime day, to do things like cut wood, whatever. Just like everybody else here has to do your stuff on Saturdays. Sundays, I devote to Bay Path. I always read everything twice. I think it was Lori who said that she does that when she reads when she reads as a writer and so on. I don't ever comment on anything unless I've read it twice. And so I try as hard as possible not to cram in your work with all my other stuff during the week. So but I did find that so many students, well-meaning students, you know, they're all in professional programs, and then they all have their own lives outside. We're turning in stuff late, and so it shows up on the module as late. It's not something I do. It's just automatically. And so you have all these really wonderful people who are accomplished in their professional lives, and here they are getting late. And that little echo of the junior high principal saying it's on your permanent record, you know, that you got in something late, the Bay Path assignment. So I've moved it, you'll see, to midnight Sunday. So nobody will ever see it late. But if you possibly can, get it in by Sunday morning, so I can read it really the way I'd love to read your work. So that means you won't be marked. There'll be no official lateness, but do the best you can with it. And if you think that other things arise in your lives, I totally understand that. Just let me know. Like, hey Mel, this thing has come up. I have these other 2 classes, and they're really brutal, and they're expecting me to turn in 50 pages by next Wednesday, just so I know. It helps if I know. Is there anything that I'm missing in comments? All right. Well, this is where I was going to ask you guys some questions based on the stuff that you sent in. So it's also a way to know each other a little bit better. So Beth, I'm going to start with you because I would imagine that something that you face might actually plague other people. When you say that you have this inertia, and maybe being a perfection, what's that feel like? How's that manifest?
Well, it manifests by doing absolutely everything but the writing. I've spent so much time reading the syllabus, setting up a calendar, setting up notebooks, you know, and not getting down. And I can feel that I'm doing it, but I just missing something, and then I missed something. I missed the first assignment that preceded the opening of the class, your August 10th announcement. So I have this, you know, it's almost like a paralysis, and yet I hate to think of myself as someone that that needs to be up against a deadline before I can even start. But it seems, you know, all my life it seems to have worked that way.
So this is where you've been honest, you're open. I would imagine that other people here at some time have grappled with this. So I see Kim nodding her head. So Kim, join in here. What do you have to say, and how have you worked with it in your own writing?
Well, one of the reasons I'm in this program is just to make me write, because I don't fit it in otherwise. So, but you know, as long as we write, I think it's okay. If we have to have a deadline to make us write, well, then we make deadlines, I guess, and we find deadlines. I think it's okay.
Right. So she's letting you off the hook of feeling like you've done something wrong, Beth. Lori, how has this ever affected you, and how have you handled it?
Absolutely. I think that I struggle with the very same thing, for sure. I put a lot of other things, you know, like crazy things like cleaning the bathrooms, like just crazy things in front of the writing. And I've come to think I've come to realize for me, it's definitely trying to, it's definitely hard to face that fear of sitting down with a blank page. And for me, it's just been trying to acknowledge that, forgive myself for that, and keep plugging away. I mean, I don't know what else to do.
I'll ask you very directly. Your very first book, because you had not done a book before, did that just come? Did you have the same?
You know, it's so interesting. That book, I was very, very constrained because my kids were very, very young. And so my writing time was as early as I could get up until about 6:45 in the morning. And so other than that, I could not write. And that probably was the book that that came the easiest for me, because I was religious about getting up and working for those 2 hours. Now that things are a little free flowing around here and people are grown and I have bigger blocks of time, man, I can fill them up with unnecessary things.
Does anybody here have what's there's a writer named Joyce Maynard, whom some of you may know her work, and we're publishing a short memoir of hers next year. So we actually photographed at her house today. But she will not interact with other people. People know not to call her. They know she's not going out for coffee. She's not going out at all between the hours of like 7 to 12, I believe, something like that. Does anyone here have that sort of a writing practice, the way people have a yoga practice, the way people have a running practice? Anybody here have a writing regimen where you are there? It's not bad if you don't. I'm just curious if you do.
When I have something due, then I create, you know, that routine. I have a sign that I put on the door of my den. It says, "Please do not bother me unless it's an emergency." So then my nephew comes and knocks on the door and says, "Just wanted to let you know I'm going for a walk." And then I bring my head into the wall. When I have to get something done, I try to do it first thing in the morning, and keep everybody out.
Okay. Maria, I've been asking everyone else about how, if it's ever afflicted you, this procrastination, this feeling like, this feeling that maybe you're not good enough, maybe you don't know, has that ever, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I tend not to be a procrastinator, but what I do is and this is a good thing, I think, in terms of this program. I usually do work in the morning. It's not a sacrosanct time, but usually I get up very early, so 4:30 to 6:30, something like that. But in terms of just that whole, I hate to say it. I think underlying there's this, I don't feel good enough, but having taken a number of classes, I've had that chiseled away at pretty consistently, because if I was all that, I wouldn't need an MFA. I wouldn't need to come to classes. I wouldn't need everybody's feedback. So the deadlines, they definitely help me. My work is very deadline oriented, so I'm used to that. But what ends up happening with work things is I just keep thinking, oh, if only I had one more day, if only I had one more week. I mean, I just want to, fidget with it and keep working on it. So at some point, that has to stop. And at least here, I feel like I can get good feedback from everybody else. And just with some of the things that have already been mentioned by you, Mel, and also my other classes, reading things out loud helps me with some of those issues. Using a different font. For me, letting things sit. I have to have, if I wait too long to do something, it's a big mistake, because I need to have that space between one version and another. You know, I just have to have some room there with it just sitting and doing nothing.
Okay. And finally, Nancy, how about you?
Yeah, I pretty much live under what me and my family call the trifecta of doom. I'm a bad teacher, a bad mother, a bad person, and that I find that really motivating to get things done. And so yeah, I think that sort of like shame and humiliation helps propel me forward. And to add to that, I am not a morning person, and so I hate all of you people who like get up at 4 o'clock or 4:30 or anything like that. That's just yeah, no, I would stay up all night. And then just be miserable the next day and be mean to everybody around me to get something done. So yeah, that's how I operate. I also like to work in I like to I like to punish myself. I sit in a hard chair, and I sit in a hard chair with my feet on the ground. Like I don't like to write on a couch or be comfortable. I have to like really be mean to myself to get it done.
So you might be quicker if you put some stones on the chair, because that's
Yeah, some hot stones, maybe some hot stones or something. Yeah, yeah.
all right. So you know, the reason I bring this kind of stuff up is, believe it or not, even though you think it's just a writing workshop is not just about the words you put on paper. Some of it really is about the process. And you know, if the process becomes a roadblock, then it's going to affect the words that you put down. So if you can kind of just say to yourself, okay, this is maybe a weak spot for me in my process, and maybe we can kind of get that out there and say, is there anything that somebody has advice that this has worked for them in their process? And I imagine that by now, almost everyone has read Bird by Bird, or at least know it, or read something by her. I mean, process is quite a bit about that book, and that's why it's been one of the most popular writing books out there. And so how many of you have been to Ireland? Obviously, Nancy went to Ireland. And,
Yeah, I did.
and then Kim went to Ireland, right? And Maria, you went to Ireland, and Beth. So I've never been. I've been asked to go, but I just can't work it into my other life here. What, Nancy, did you come away with that you think you can use in your work in this class and going forward?
I think that being part of a community of writers was really important. So it's not just about or maybe it is about the class community, but being part of a community and sharing work. And the other thing that I came away with was I just was so impressed by the practicality of some of the authors who said like, oh yeah, like this was the book I wrote when like I had to pay tuition. This was the book I wrote when like I had to like, you know, like pay my mortgage. I was going to lose my house. This is the book I wrote that I really wanted to write and I love to write. And so I thought, I just like that practicality that, you know, you don't have to just be like an artist or, you know, it's okay to write to pay the bills if you can, hallelujah. But maybe it doesn't all have to be, you know, prize winning literature.
Okay. And Maria, you said you've been to Ireland. What did you?
I went last year.
What can we say? This is what changed me, or I've been able to take away from it.
That was the first time. It was the second class I actually took. The first class I took was in May, but it was the first time I actually sat in a room with other writers and got feedback, you know, and constructive criticism, and read other people's work and did the same thing. So that was huge for me.
Okay. And Kim, you said right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been twice now. For me, it's partly the place. You know, my grandparents were born near there, and so there's a whole lot of emotions that go with it. I'd never met either one of them, I feel like I fit in there. That's part of it. Another part of it is just kind of the cheerleading maybe of Suzanne and Leanna. You know, they just make me feel so good about doing what I'm doing, about writing. That keeps me fueled for a while. it just is fun to talk to them, and then I guess just being part of that community. You know, you find other people who enjoy doing it too, and I guess it makes me feel like there's a reason to write. You know, if all these other people write and make a habit of it, make a life of it, then maybe the fact that I like to write is okay too.
And Beth.
Yes, I've been both years as well, 16 and 17, and I would say ditto to what's already been said, but I just like the idea of being immersed in a writing community.
Beth, you've been invaded by body snatchers, your voice. So I wonder if you might, I don't know, now try it again. See if you can, we can hear you.
Can you
better.
hear me now? Okay.
It's a little warbly. It's a little warbly. So if it might be one of the things that you might, I don't know if you've ever, if it keeps up, you might go through Mary Wiseman tomorrow and just say you had this little problem. It just emerged right now. The rest of you heard it too, right? It was like a little warble.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Try it one more time.
Okay. I went both summers, and what I liked most is the immersion.
Okay. It's like a connectivity thing that's going on with you because so I don't want to. What you were saying, I know was important. I don't want to cut you off. It's just that it's like warbly, and I know you're not a warbler. All right. And then the one thing I wanted to, I had one thing I wanted to ask before we left tonight. I don't know, because I don't know all your previous work or the classes that you're taking. When you know that you have to do a 2,000+ word personal essay for the class as a major, does that feel daunting? Does it feel like something you look forward to? I want to kind of, you already, because I know you'd read the syllabus probably, you already have some things percolating that you think you want to write about, and I'll start with you, Lori.
Yes, I have a few different ideas, and I've been I haven't done anything with them, but I just have been thinking how they might be a good subject for that piece.
Okay, and Kim.
I'm excited about it. I've got some ideas that I want to work on. Yeah.
Okay, and Beth, I'm going to give you another crack here. Beth, what do you?
Me?
Yeah, Beth.
I've made a decision about.
Okay, and then
I made a decision about what to write.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it feels daunting or if you feel okay. This is something I know I can tackle and I feel good about it.
Yeah, I feel good about it.
Okay, and Maria.
It's not the amount of words that's daunting. I'm struggling with the subject matter right now. I'm not sure.
That's fine. And Nancy.
Yeah, I have too many ideas. So I need to strap myself to the chair and I think that, the writing prompts, those are good. Those are good to have, even, to have like 200, 300 words, tucked away that you can maybe build on or combine. That's really helpful for me. So I know I can do it. I just, yeah, we'll see where we go.
The reason I mention that is it is not a requirement that you come with ideas. The requirement is that when we get the right idea, then you feel good about it, is that you write it. I've had in this magazine that I edit, you can't believe how many stories I've just been worked where the idea came from the writer and me talking. So if anybody feels daunted, stuck, overwhelmed, or whatever, all you do is contact me and we just talk. And I would treat you just as if you were having a writer lunch with me about an essay for our magazine. So you do not have to, it's not a prerequisite that you have to come to the table with us. We can talk about it as well. So that's out there. And the last thing is totally not a requirement, but if you would like me to send you Yankee Magazine, which I edit, All you do is you send me your address. I put it in the mail tomorrow. You'll have it in like 2 or 3 days. The September issue is really a good one, I will say. I just need a place to send it. And we almost always have a personal essay in every issue. Actually, sometimes 2 and so on. Because I love, Yankee used to be one of the foremost places to publish fiction and poetry. And that just changed when the climate changed and pages became more precious and pages got cut. And so we stuck with our creative, what I call creative nonfiction and so on, but not fiction. And some of you may not even know the magazine, but if you do, September is a good one. So send me your address if you want it. I'll put it in the mail tomorrow. You'll have it in a few days. Are there any questions before we say goodnight for our first class?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who goes first? I'll go first. So if it feels like, are we like all dating? Like when we do this when we do this class, does that mean like we're all gonna stay together and do like the next class together and then the next class? Like, so do people stay, like, so this is like the Form and Theory 1. Are we like all gonna like do we make a commitment to like we like Mel, so we're gonna stay and do Form and Theory 2 with Mel, or would we like shop around? How does it like work?
I've never had the same group follow through. I've had several follow. I know that, I mean, I don't want to speak for Leanna. I think she likes to spread things out, but you guys, you may end up saying this is a terrible class, so you may want to get out. But I think you will. People have liked the class. I've never had an ensemble before. You know?
Okay.
Any other thoughts? I am going to look for some lighter writing fare. So Beth, you came in after this. Nancy had a comment that the readings seem to tilt a little bit towards the maybe the more somber side, and so I'm going to look for some really well-written lighter ones, and that you can do the same. I may not substitute them, but I might. So we'll see how that goes. I'm always, and I really enjoyed you already. So Beth, good night. Try to if you get a chance to, maybe contact Mary Wiseman and say, here's what the thing that came up, and she will probably ask to do a hangout with you, a personal hangout. And she's always helped everyone I've ever had in this class with technical stuff. Good night, Kim. Do you teach every day? Do you have a class again tomorrow?
I teach Monday through Thursday and then online on Friday. So yes.
Laurie, thanks for joining in. You're actually the first one we've had in this class in 3 years that actually has published books. So I guarantee you it's going to come up. People are going to kind of try to plumb your experience for how that all happened, right? And then Maria, thank you. And you're still working the law office, correct?
I do. Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be quite interesting to see how that discipline of law writing and land planning and so on, and city planning translates into what we call this creative nonfiction genre. And Nancy, I can see you're already going to make us smile, which is always a great thing to have in any group. So good night, everybody. I'm going to look for your stuff on Sunday. You're going to send me your address if you want, Yankee. And I'm going to look for your stuff on Sunday, and we're going to converse back and forth on Sunday, and it'll be great. And I'll see everybody next week. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Bye.